What gives a leader their power? The answer to that, ultimately, is the people following them, a sentiment that appears in the United States Declaration of Independence as the consent of the governed. In that context, it's used to say that the people should be the ones choosing their leader, and that idea is one of the foundations of modern democracy all around the world. But you could also say that that's true even in non-democratic systems, both current and ancient. If enough people, or at least enough of the right people, are unhappy enough, it would lead to a change in leadership. So, if you're a monarch, what's one of the most important things you can do to stay king? You have to convince the people that you're the best person for the job. And as with so many other situations, one of the most effective ways of doing this is with stories. In European cultures, it's often called the divine right of kings, basically saying, if God didn't want me here, he wouldn't have put me here. That same idea is repeated in different forms all around the world, and dynastic China was no exception. They called it tianming, literally the heavenly mandate, and it was used to establish a new dynasty, which, of course, typically meant overthrowing the old one, and if you succeeded, the reason was because you had the mandate of heaven. Although this story predates the need to overthrow dynasties, because there hadn't been any yet, early leaders still told stories to legitimize their rule. There are probably more, but most of the Chinese myths of this genre that I've run across fall into three distinct categories. Supernatural conception, like getting pregnant after stepping in a dragon's footprint, heroic deeds, like stopping a flood, and supernatural encounter, like meeting a Qilin or Huang, the mother goddess of the West. Today's story falls into the last category, and was probably used to give legitimacy to the reign of the ruler who began to unify ancient China, the Yellow Emperor, Huang. Join me, Jer Christie, as I explore the hidden legends that shape the world on The Mythographist, Myths of Mainland China. Huang meets Baize. The Yellow Emperor, Huang was a cunning strategist and an insightful leader. He led his people through battle, winning many victories, conquering Yandi, the Flame Emperor, and defending his land against the machinations of fierce Churyo and his army. Huang brought together fighting tribes and sowed the seeds of a nation, but war was not his only feat. No, Huang was also a wise man, both strong and humble, rare qualities in anyone, to say nothing of a leader. He was not like the first Qin emperor, who ignored an invitation from Huang despite his thirst for immortality. Nor was he like the last emperor of Shang, who became so drunk on pleasure and vice that he was led to ruin by the three spirits of the Xuanyuan tomb. Instead, the great Huang remembered that he was only a man, even though he was chosen by the gods to be eminent among all emperors. How do we know this? When Huang was emperor, ruling the eastern lands, he himself patrolled the wild borders with the common scouts. He did not do so with a great army for show, neither did he go with his royal guards, as one who fears the unknown and unknowable. No, he set off as any other man, not in pursuit of greatness, but because this was the duty that needed to be done. Now in the wilderness, there are tales of many beasts, creatures, spirits, and monsters, mythical and strange of every sort imaginable. Huang knew many of these stories, of course, and, like any wise man, knew also that he had not heard all the stories of all the beasts. Still more, he knew it very likely that there were some beasts that had yet to be glimpsed by any mortal at all. It is wise, when you are in the wild, to keep your eyes open, for you never know when you might see something that has never been seen before. As it was then, on one of his sojourns through the low wetlands and stony mountains, Huang has made a fire for the evening and set out the bamboo mat on which he will sleep. He is looking at the dusking sky, dreaming of the future of his kingdom, when he realizes that he is no longer alone at his fire. Beside him is a figure like that of a man, as tall as he, and with a head and 2 arms and 2 legs, but this figure is all covered in white fur. Its face is almost human, with deep black round eyes that look at him calmly. Its hands are tough and bone-like, almost like hooves, as if it walks on all 4s through the untamed landscape. Huang can hardly believe his eyes, not because he does not know the creature before him, but because he does. He has heard tell of a creature like this, and indeed, who has not? Every child in the realm knows Baize, the creature of the White Marsh, and its unsurpassed wisdom and knowledge of all things under heaven. It is a herald of auspicious comings, a sign of fortune to come, and Huang, leader of a nation though he is, bows low and offers his greetings and gratitude. "O eminent Baize," he says, "welcome to my camp. I honor your presence. I am your servant." Baize is no mere beast, of course. It can understand his speech, and it gives him these words. "Huang, it is said through all your lands that you are wise and just, a noble and honorable man, and the respect you show attests to this. Ask me a question, then, that I may see your wisdom, and if I find you worthy, I will give you answer, that you may better rule your people." Such an offer Huang cannot take lightly. He considers his position and the people he rules. He considers their place in the world and their circumstance. How best can he serve them? What question can he ask? Perhaps he should ask of his enemies, of their strengths and weaknesses, or their movements through the countryside. Or would it be better to inquire about the future and what it might hold? Could he benefit from knowing what crops would come in season, or which days the rains would come? What of the nature of men, and those who serve in his court? Does their loyalty truly lie with him, and can he trust those who he keeps close? Or what of a gift? Could he ask for immortality, for his name to be written on the stone ledger of the gods? For the favor of heaven, or an army of demons? Should he request a 3rd eye to see the truth of all things, or a sword that can pierce any armor? Huang bows again and tells him this. "O esteemed Baize, though I am strong, victorious against many, and ruler of my people, I am but a man, and my eyes will always be blind to the things I cannot see. Therefore I ask, revered Baize, that you teach me of this land, and of all the creatures and spirits that call it home, that I may know their nature, and prepare my people for the wilds of the wilderness." Baize looks upon Huang and sees that he is indeed wise, for he asks not for strength or power, neither fame nor long life, but rather he thirsts for knowledge, and that to help his nation. And Baize says to the Yellow Emperor, "Your question is wise indeed, and shows that you are worthy of the office you will hold. So I shall answer your question, that you may pass the knowledge on to your people." So it was that Baize dictated to Huang all the names and natures of 11,520 creatures and spirits that lived upon the lands. And Huang wrote them down, one and all, filling scroll after scroll with every detail that Baize told him. This great book is Baize II, the map of Baize, which served not only Huang people, but their descendants, and those who came after them for many, many generations. So we may know that the pursuit of knowledge is the measure of wisdom, and understanding outlives generations of mighty deeds. First off, I'd like to say that I really wish I was smart enough to have planned this, but I wrote this script well over a year ago and scheduled it months back, and it is pure coincidence that it's being released the day after the British coronation. Huang, whose name means Yellow Emperor, was the last of the tribal rulers and was ostensibly the one who brought those tribes together, as we'll see in next week's episode. As I've mentioned before, something that puzzled me as I researched these emperors was that none of them was the good emperor or the bad emperor. They were all just ancestors of China who happened to be in conflict with each other. Now that I've seen the bigger picture, I think it's connected to tianming, the heavenly mandate. Since the supernatural Baize elected to visit Huang, his emperorship was justified. And although I'm not sure I'm within my rights to do this, I have teased out other qualities that seem nascent within this story: humanity, humility, wisdom, and skill with nature. These, along with Huangdi's request of Baize and its results, bear striking similarity to two stories that are well known in the West. Huangdi asks for knowledge instead of a more conventional choice like military might, very similar to the biblical King Solomon, the son of David, asking the Hebrew God for wisdom, which was what he was most famous for. And knowing the names and identities of all the creatures of the lands mirrors another Bible story, Adam, the first human, naming the animals. That story goes that God told Adam that he had dominion over all of nature, and had Adam give each animal its name, which figuratively meant that he assigned identity and behavioral characteristics to each type of living thing. It's interesting that Adam had agency in naming, but not in receiving that agency, while Huangdi exercised agency in asking for knowledge, but couldn't do anything about the information he received. Both Adam and Huangdi exercised agency in gaining dominion over nature, but were still beholden to a higher power. There's that heavenly mandate again. This is a well-known story in modern China, and it seems to have quite a long history. Map of Baize, or Baize II, was apparently a real book at some point in time, a very long time ago, because now all we have is books that reference it and quote it. As for Baize himself, the Bai in his name means white, while the Z character is related to both water or wetlands and bovine-type creatures. Descriptions of him in Chinese and Japanese literature range from tiger to cow to dragon to many-eyed monster, but all I can never really think of is that white furry meme creature. You can Google it if you don't know what I'm talking about. And to be honest, if I were emperor, I can't think of many things that I would rather have bless my rule than that guy, whatever he looks like. Thanks for listening. This episode of The Mythographist was written, narrated, and produced by me, Jer Christie, with research by myself and Elena Tung, and music by Xiaoqing Luna Li, and from the compilation The Essence of Famous Chinese Folk Music. If you liked this episode, stick around, because there's lots more where this came from. Subscribe to get notified automatically when The Mythographist updates, and be sure to check out the rest of the episodes on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. Finally, if there's a story that you grew up with that has shaped the way you see the world, I'd love to hear it. There are so many stories out there, and the more of each other's stories we hear, the more we'll understand each other, because we can't learn if we don't listen. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time on The Mythographist. Are you on the toilet, Ocho? That's very nice.